Greetings internet, it's Monica, and today I am finally going to be talking about the books that I read in May, doing a bit of a wrap up. I decided to call this my Asian books recommendations video though, because I have so many books that I want to recommend to you guys that I absolutely loved. If you don't know, in May I themed my TBR for that month to be exclusively books by or featuring Asian characters, and it was such an amazing month of reading. I feel like I left it just feeling so empowered, and I have so many thoughts about just the various Asian experiences, especially Asian American experiences that I read about, and I ended up kind of focusing in on YA this month. That wasn't my intent at the beginning of the month, but I just ended up really becoming very interested in that experience, specifically of being an Asian American teen. So a lot of the books that I read were focused on that, but not all. And yeah, I'm just so excited to share these books with you guys, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump on in. The first book that I read in May was American Panda by Gloria Chow. Now, this was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and I'm so excited that I finally picked this one up because it was such a great way to start the month. This book follows Mei Lu, who is 17 and in her first year at MIT, and she is on track to become a doctor, but she is extremely afraid of germs, and the idea of actually doing the day-to-day work of being a doctor does not appeal to her at all. And she comes from this incredibly strict family who want her to marry another Taiwanese boy. They want her to achieve this dream that they have of her becoming a doctor and just succeeding in every way that they see that she should be succeeding, and especially not doing the things that she loves, which includes dance. And so this is about Mei Lu just trying to find herself and find her own identity and just learning how to pave her own path, especially coming from a family that does not want her to do that. This was, I thought, really eye-opening because there are real stakes in this book. I know that there are lots of kids in this world who will see themselves in May's character and will see themselves in this story. And, there are parts of it where I related to it, and I definitely did not come from a family nearly as strict as May's. This really had me thinking about that pressure of being the child of in an Asian family, and how that experience is different, and why it's so important to show different types of experiences. Then I picked up Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lin, and this is just a really lovely middle grade story. It's super easy to read. If you have kids in your life, I the font's really big and super spaced out, and there are really pretty illustrations throughout. I would say if you have children in your life, I highly recommend picking this book up for them because it's just, again, such a lovely story. You follow Min Lee, who lives in the Valley of Fruitless Mountain, and it's her story of trying to get the mountain to basically bear fruit. And she goes on this journey to find the old man of the moon to ask him why her area is so impoverished when it comes to food, and along the way she ends up befriending a dragon and just having all these amazing adventures. And it's such, again, it's just so lovely. The author incorporated so many Chinese myths and legends into this book, and it's just really great. Also, it was a Newbery Honor book, in case that is something of interest to you. Then I picked up The Way You Make Me Feel by Maureen Gu, which was another one of my most anticipated books of this year. This book was sent to me by Farrar Straus Giroux. I think that's how you say that. This book came out in May of this year, and I was so excited for it because Maureen Gu's last book, I Believe in a Thing Called Love, was one of my favorite books of last year. It was just so fun to read, and so that one was all about Korean dramas, so I was so excited to read this one. This follows 16-year-old Clara Shin, who is, I loved this book particularly because Clara was so different from a lot of the Korean American protagonists who I had read from the perspective of. A lot of them, are very nice, and Clara, it's not that she's not nice, but she is rough around the edges. Her dad runs a Korean-Brazilian food truck. He is Korean, but he grew up, I believe, in Brazil, and he immigrated from Brazil to America. And I thought that element was really interesting because I feel it's usually that, you have a Korean family who's from Korea. They come to America, and you know, that's not where all Koreans come from, nor all Asians. Like, we're all over the place. So it was kind of nice to just get like a different viewpoint and a different like type of character and a different type of background. Like, this is why diverse books are so wonderful, because then like you get such like specific and like interesting backgrounds and characters that are just so necessary in our world. But anyways, this is about her and her school rival having to work in her dad's food truck as punishment over the summer. This book is really about friendships and expectations, like especially like the expectations you put on yourself, and being afraid of failure, and the sort of like how someone having a negative expectation for you then influences your own outcomes in life. And I thought that was really interesting, because that's something that like I remember in high school is I would see kids who the teachers sort of decided that they were like the bad kids and then put them in that bubble in their heads. And then of course the kid never like felt like they could get out of that, because they felt like they had already been like, you know, pigeonholed into this role that they can never escape. And I thought that commentary was really interesting in this book. I also just thought that the commentary on friendships and friend groups and all of that was really well done. I also thought the social media influencer element of this was really funny. Her mom is like a famous social media influencer, and it was like kind of interesting to see how Maureen Gu wrote about that. And then of course the food in this is like amazing. Like, you should definitely have like some snacks next to you when you're reading this book, because you will be hungry, because they describe all the food and it sounds so good. Then I picked up Written in the Stars by Aisha Saeed, and this is a book that has been on my TBR for so long, and I'm so happy that I finally read this, because this was phenomenal. This is an Own Voices book about a girl who is the daughter of parents who are from Pakistan, and they are incredibly traditional to the point where, you know, she can't really go to sleepovers or events like prom. She definitely cannot have a boyfriend that they have not chosen for her. She's expected to have an arranged marriage. Basically, at the very beginning, her parents discover that she has a secret boyfriend, and they take her to Pakistan to have her be part of an arranged marriage. And like, I found myself physically shaking throughout this book, throughout much of reading this book, from like anger and fear and frustration. It like hit me emotionally in ways that I was totally not expecting. I will give this a trigger warning for physical assault and sexual assault, but this book was just so incredibly important. Then as an audiobook, I listened to Juniors, and I listened to this on the Scribd app, which I've talked about previously on my channel. If you're not familiar with Scribd, it is a unlimited audiobook ebook app where you pay like less than $10 a month and you get access to all of their books, and they have like so many books, including new releases, which is great. Not sponsored. I just really like Scribd. But anyways, I listened to Juniors by Cowie Hart Hemmings, and I can't fully figure out how I felt about this book. I think it is so atmospheric. It's definitely a more quiet and contemplative YA contemporary, which I liked. I just couldn't figure out if I liked the story or not. I don't know. Maybe I just took too long to read it or something, but it just, yeah, I just sort of struggled with it. But it basically, this is set in Hawaii, and I thought that the culture was weaved in really interestingly, and it like really created this amazing atmosphere for the book. Like, I definitely, when I was reading it, like I felt like I could feel the heat, and I could sort of like feel like this sort of like drawl to the world that they were living in. I also thought it like dealt with sort of just differences in class really interestingly, because the main character is not from a super wealthy family, but she's living in this world of very wealthy people, and so I thought that was quite interestingly done. It's basically just sort of like a YA contemporary. It's mostly about friendship, which I also really enjoyed. Maybe I did like this book more than I thought. I really enjoyed like the fact that like even though there are some like romantic elements in it, the real focus I felt like relationship wise was the friendship. I would definitely read more by this author. So yeah, that was like a really not good review. I'm sorry. Then I picked up Emergency Contact by Mary H.K. Choi, and I was so nervous going into this book because I had heard such mixed things about it. Like I mean, mostly I had started to hear pretty negative things about it, and that made me really sad because this was one of my most anticipated books of the year, because I mean, the cover was part of the reason, but also I just like love supporting books by Asian authors. And also it's gotten comparisons to Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell, which is one of my favorite books of all time. That's kind of a controversial statement for an Asian person to say, because I know a lot of people have like major issues with Eleanor and Park, which is valid. For me, Eleanor and Park was one of the first times where like I felt seen as a mixed race Asian American person, and I know like my sister felt very similarly, especially because she grew up during that time period that it's set in. I'll talk about Eleanor and Park really quick before I get into Emergency Contact, but for me, when I read Eleanor and Park, even like the racism that is like sort of weaved throughout the book, it's not contested in the book, but when I read it, like I read it as like, obviously none of this is okay, but she's like portraying an accurate representation of what it was like to grow up during that time period and what it's like to what it's like to just get that sort of casual racism from your friends and your loved ones who, you know, will just say things offhand, and they don't think about it, and you know, you don't say anything back because, you know, you're a teen and you have internalized racism, so you just sort of laugh it off and let it go. And I thought like the way that she portrayed that was like so perfect and like nuanced, and like I related to it so much. But I also know that people who have read it and read a lot of those parts, sorry if you can hear cars outside, it's New York City, but I know a lot of people who have read those parts felt very differently, and I think that that's valid, and I think that's why I haven't really talked much about Eleanor and Park, is because I don't want to be the like Asian person that people use to say like, oh well, this one person said that it was fine, so it's fine, because I don't think that that's good or helpful. I can only speak to my experiences, and for me, like Park's family was my family, and I just related to a lot. And I do think that a lot of the ways that Mary H.K. Choi deals with racism in her book too is very similar to Eleanor and Park, where it's sort of just like dropped in and it's very casual, and people who are friends with this main character will sort of just say things, and like she'll call them out like once in a while, but for the most part it just sort of like is said and then they go on, because that's the way that oftentimes like the racism of like casual friends happens. And I thought that was really powerful, and like I really value that is being shown, because I think so often we think of racism as like only these like, and I think it's really important to show like the really big impactful moments of racism, but I think like microaggressions and like the racism between like friends is also very important to show, and I'm really thankful that authors like Mary H.K. Choi are doing that. And this book isn't really about racism, the character just happens to be Asian, and so like she experiences that sometimes. So quick synopsis, this follows Penny and Sam. It follows both of their perspectives, and Penny is coming from like a very sort of non-eventful high school career. She's a very turbulent relationship with her mother, and this is her freshman year at college. Sam also has a very turbulent relationship with his mother, and he has dropped out of college for the time, and he is living in the cafe that he's working at. In the story, they end up exchanging numbers and communicating via text, and just having this really interesting like emotional connection that is established at the beginning, at least foundation-wise, via text message and digitally, which I thought was like really interesting. I thought she did such a good job of showing how like deep and real digital communication can be. I loved these two characters, Penny and Sam. Penny is grating. She is not a nice girl. She definitely has some internalized sexism. She has like a big sort of like I'm not like other girls kind of syndrome going on, but I think that this book tackles girl on girl hate really well. But I loved Penny because she was a rough character, and she's not perfect, and like she's mean to other people in a way that you're like, why are you so mean? But like also felt very real, because I think, you know, oftentimes we are the meanest to the people we love. I know for me, like when I was a teen, like I would say things to my parents that like if they were in a YA book, people would be like, I hate this girl. I never want to read from this like unlikable, awful character who can't be nice to her mom. Because like sometimes that's just how teens are. Sometimes you're mean, and you know, I think Penny has like definitely things and reasons why that's like sort of driving some of that and driving that wedge between her and her mom. But I thought that just sort of her depiction of her relationship with her mom, that was like turbulent and rough, and like she loves her, but like there is also this like barrier there. I thought that was like really well done for me personally. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and I was so nervous going into it because I had like heard very mixed reviews from friends too, and it's not a perfect book, but I'm really excited to see what else this author writes because this one was one that I loved so much. Oh, I will also give a trigger warning for sexual assault in this book. It's not a huge part of the book, and it's never like not really graphically like shown in the story, which I appreciated. It is part of the story itself, and I personally thought it was handled well. I kind of felt like it needed to be a bit more, I don't want to say a bit more integrated, but I just sort of felt like maybe this book needed to be a bit longer to like really deal with that or delve into that. But I didn't think it was handled horribly by any means. Then I have a couple books that I unfortunately DNF'd last month. The two are Arusha and the End of Time and A Torch Against the Night. So Arusha, I started and I just like kind of felt similarly to like Rashni Chakshi's writing is really beautiful, but I like struggled to really get into her plots, and that's sort of how I felt with this one. I like got like a third of the way through and I ended up sort of DNFing it, not really just feeling myself connecting with anything that was going on. Basically it follows Arusha. She ends up like awaking this god that wreaks havoc on the world and stops time, and she has to like figure out what's going on and save the day. And I think it would be a really great middle grade read, and I'm sure there are lots of people who will read it and love it, but for me it just didn't work. And then as for A Torch Against the Night, I DNF'd it because I need to reread the first one because I couldn't remember. Like I got like halfway through and I was like, I can't follow this because I have really no idea what happened in the last book. So yeah, I gotta get a recap of that. So if anyone knows of a really good recap of that first book, like a detailed recap, please let me know, because I kind of don't feel like rereading the entire book, but I also want to read the final book in the series. So, and then the final book that I read last month, I also listened to via audiobook, and that is China Rich Girlfriend by Kevin Kwan. This is a adult contemporary story. It's the second book in the Crazy Rich Asian series, which is getting a film later this summer. There are fireworks going on outside. People, it is not the 4th of July yet. This is the continuation from the first book in that series, so I can't really talk about what the story is about without ruining the first book. But the first book follows Rachel Chu when she goes with her boyfriend to Singapore, and when she gets there, she discovers that he is crazy rich and his family is very overbearing, and like it's basically like the royals but richer. And the first one was so funny, and I just loved all the different characters and just reading about this like totally different world from anything I had ever read before. So I loved all of that. The second book I didn't think was quite as successful, but I have heard really good things about the third one, so I'm definitely excited to pick that up, and definitely like so excited for the film to come out. The trailer looked good. I like wanted it to be a bit more over the top, but it looked good. I'm excited. I'm holding judgment. I'm just like nervous. Like frustrating part about our media is that if Crazy Rich Asians doesn't do well, there's this fear that then we'll never get another like Asian film with a bunch of Asians in it, and that like this will be like the nail in the coffin or something, because Hollywood is great. So I think a lot of people are just like very nervous for like the film to do well, like it's like not allowed to flop, and that's nerve-wracking and frustrating that is the way that our world is. But I do hope it does well, and I hope that it is a good movie and that I like it, so we'll see. So yeah, those are the books that I read last month. I read a bunch of like manga also, but I will be talking about that in a future manga and comics wrap up. So if you've read any of these books, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, or if you have any recommendations for books, I would love to get them, because I am always on the lookout for books featuring or by Asian authors. That's something that is like a huge focus for me. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to y'all next time. Bye!